Well, my name is Sonya Sigler, and I am an executive leadership coach and strategy consultant working with companies and with team leaders. And I work with people who want to become better leaders and have high performing teams. And in part of that work, some of what I do is getting noticed on LinkedIn, and it's one of the topics I cover in my book called Welcome to the Next Level, and I'll tell you more about that as we go. I don't meet that many people who love to write or talk about themselves or their accomplishments, but that's fundamentally what we're going to do today to get noticed on LinkedIn. So we're going to go through all the ways we can use LinkedIn and get noticed on there, and you'll need to pay attention a couple of ways through because I have details on linking in with me and details on how to get my book for free. So let's get started. And if you have questions, there's a Q&A window to put those in. And I would like to answer questions as we go along so that I get everybody's questions answered. If we run out of time, I'll stay a little bit over time to answer questions directly. So let's get started. Maybe I'll get started. We'll go to the next slide. Hopefully we see a different slide. Is that right, Nina?
Yes.
Great, thanks. So the key to getting noticed on LinkedIn is really all about authentic personal branding. And it's really answering the question, are you boring or memorable? And we're going to go through each of these, and keep this in mind as we go through the nitty-gritty details on what to do on LinkedIn is, are you boring or memorable? And our roadmap for today will cover all of these areas. And yes, I'm happy to share the slides. And one of the questions is, will you share the slides after the call? Yes, I'm happy to share the slides and we can get that out to you. So the areas we're going to cover today are you being authentic? And this is really drilling down to authentic personal branding at its best. And then the next thing is, what story do you want to tell? And this is really up to you and the details of what you tell and put in your LinkedIn profile, and what story you want to tell for what purpose. So what is your goal or purpose with LinkedIn, and what does that look like? And really think about why something's in your profile or not, and then why to include something or not include something. And then I think keeping in mind, if you're looking for a job and you're looking to get hired, and that's the purpose of retooling your LinkedIn profile, and I'm guessing it is, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here today listening to this webinar, is that people hire people they like. So the know, like, trust factor is really what we're going for when we look at putting anything in our LinkedIn profile. So as you take a look at what we're doing here today, and when you take a look at my LinkedIn profile and when you link in with me, you'll see that I really concentrate on practical, implementable advice that is immediately usable. And everything that I do, with the name of my company to the advice that I give and how I work with people, is really focused on that practical, implementable advice. So hopefully that story comes through when you take a look at my profile. The key to getting noticed on LinkedIn is really all about authentic personal branding. And let me just break this down for you. Your authentic personal brand is the differentiated story you intentionally tell to attract specific people to you. And the parts of this that are important is the authenticity, and then being able to differentiate yourself from others. You may do some of the same things that others do. For example, if you're a project manager, you may have some of the same skills that other people do, but how do you differentiate yourself, and what do you tell about you to make that stand out? The other part is that it's intentional. You have a story out there about you. You may have no information on your profile, or you may have a lot of information on your profile, but being intentional about how you craft it, what you include, what you don't include, that's what's important here. And then the last part of this is really about attracting specific people to you and repelling others. So when we wrote a description for this webinar, we said this is for people who are job hunting or about to job hunt. If you're perfectly content in your job and you don't care about getting noticed on LinkedIn, then this webinar wouldn't be for you. So those kind of marketing details, you're doing that for yourself on LinkedIn. So this is your story and you get to shape it and tell it. So that's what this is all about. So I use a quote in here from Hamilton: who lives, who dies, who tells your story? It's you. You get to tell your story. So when you add anything or take anything out of your LinkedIn profile, that's what you're doing. You're telling a story. You're crafting that story. This is all about you and you get to tell your story. So keep that in mind as we go through and look at the details of what goes into a LinkedIn profile. I'll say one word of caution about bragging versus telling your story. This is one thing I hear from people all the time when I work with them, is that it's so uncomfortable. They get cultural messages: don't brag, don't stand out, modesty is good, bragging is bad, and on and on. And I think that all those messages, I hear them on a worldwide basis, and I hear it in men and women, so not just women. That cultural message is very, very strong. And we kind of have to ignore it as we craft our own LinkedIn profile, because you get to own your skills, you get to own your own accomplishments, you get to own your own story and tell it. So that's what I want you to keep in mind as we go through all the details that are part of crafting your story. What's your goal or purpose in creating a LinkedIn profile? So looking at the context or the audience that you want to attract, it may change over time. It may be the same, and it may be multiple audiences. But right now I'm guessing a lot of you are on job hunting, or you're trying to attract customers or repel others, or you're pitching investors and trying to raise money if you've started a business or already owning a business. So all these different purposes may require you to put different information in your LinkedIn profile. There are other purposes as well, and all of this information that you're putting in your LinkedIn profile may also be used for doing introductions or a bio, or it may have information that you would use at a networking event or out and about, maybe giving an elevator pitch to somebody, or even in the dating context. So as you craft a profile, keep these different contexts or audiences involved, in mind as you're writing your description or you're putting a picture in there. If you're job hunting, it may look one way. If you're trying to attract customers, your profile may look a different way. So I just want you to keep that context in mind. On this slide, I have my LinkedIn link. You can just find me by my first and last name, Sonya Sigler. And I'm happy to link in with anybody on this webinar, and just put a little note with it that says you met me on this webinar and that you want to link in with me, just so I have some context for it. And I'm happy to help you with any connections. If there's someone I'm connected to, I'm happy to introduce you if that makes sense, and make those kind of connections. I think it's really important that we help each other. And that's one of the things that I do with my clients, is I really help bring those connections and introductions to people. So please link in with me. Let's get started. The picture you use, the image that you have, matters. And I have a lot of different personas. I'm an IP lawyer and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an operations executive. I've worked in startups for the last 20 years, getting them off the ground. I'm a mom to 3 boys. They're 18, 20, and 22. I'm a fundraiser. I've done fundraising for almost every group I've been in, from orchestras to education to sports organizations, all kinds of different ones. So I think it's important to call those things out as well. I'm a coach, obviously an executive coach, but also I have done baseball and soccer. I'm a singer, dancer, actor, and finally I'm an author, and I published a book last year, and I'm just starting the process on my second book. So there's a lot of different messages to get across, and I can do that with pictures, or I can do that with images. And I think it's important for these pictures to be as professional as possible. And the photo you have should work as a circle or a square or as a rectangle or an oval. So you're gonna need to play around with what that looks like. And then the context matters. So the picture of me in a corset and a crazy hat from one of my performances, I put that on my LinkedIn profile, and my mentor who wrote the foreword for my book, she called me like within 5 minutes of seeing it posted. And she's like, that's so unprofessional. How can you put that on LinkedIn? And I was like, well, our performances are starting this week and I want people to come to our performances. And she's like, you can't put that on there. It's so unprofessional. And I was like, but I want people to come to our performances. So I ended up leaving it up there for the 2 weeks to draw attention to performances. So I had a very particular purpose for including that picture. So I would say take a close look at your online persona on LinkedIn, and from the point of view of a recruiter or hiring manager, how do you want to appear? I would probably use the picture of me in glasses on either end. My author picture is the one on the far right. And then I love the caricature, and I use that on my business cards. So whatever image you're trying to convey is the kind of picture you want to put on your profile. And then just one kind of other question. What's in your email signature? Is there a logo or is there an image? Is there a picture of you? Is there something else there, or is there nothing? Maybe a phone number. So that's one other area where you would get some real estate and some memorableness. So I think that's important to keep in mind. So let's go to actual examples of what is good and bad. So this particular set of slides, I put some examples. Don't use blurry pictures. Avoid pictures of parties or vacation, or cropping other people out, or backsides, or overtly sexy or boudoir kind of photos. Shirtless, hats, sunglasses. I was having a hard time finding hat and sunglass pictures, but that, if you looked maybe last year, you'd find a lot more of those. So this kind of gives you an idea of what's out there. Grainy, gritty, unfocused pictures, pictures that don't fit in a circle, pictures that show too much of your body, pictures that look like you've been in a lineup. All these don't fall into the professional. This one of the women in the circle, she's in a Starbucks and she's got other people behind her. So really think about the image you're trying to convey and what you want to include on there. Starting with your picture, you got to have one. My friend Tom Klinsky, he was the CEO of SEGA when I worked there. He doesn't have a picture, and he's like, yeah, I don't really care to have a picture. I'm retired. I don't need to attract the people that need to know me already know me. So he's like, I don't need a picture. The other one on here that doesn't have a picture, Manny Aaron, Connecting Lawyers. I'm not sure I'd want to work with someone who says they're connecting, in the business of connecting people, and they don't have a picture on there. So that's just something to keep in mind as what story, what brand do you want to project for you personally, and then pick a picture that supports that. I'm going to give you a couple good examples. So I'm going to just start from the left. The guy here is the CEO in the fuchsia color shirt. And if you can't hear me, try your sound. My sound is turned up. The other picture of the woman sitting on a park bench, I was kind of on the fence about whether that was a good picture or not, but it really fits in with the rest of her persona. She is a branding consultant with logos, and she was wearing a dress with her logo on it, and I thought, okay, that's smart. It's really walking the walk, if you will. The guy in the middle is a CEO coach. He has a nice professional smiling picture. It's personable. The woman in the blue dress, she's very professional looking and friendly. Guy Kawasaki, who's over here on the far right, normally I would say don't take selfies and don't put them in there, but he has actually got a blog about connecting and about being approachable and friendly, and he does a lot of photography, so that's why he included it. Now, I wouldn't have pictures with children in there, except this woman runs a preschool. So it makes total sense that she's showing a picture of either her own daughter or someone in the preschool with the face fuzzed out. The guy here in the center, he's friendly, he's an engineer, just good information. So these, I think, are all good examples of professional, friendly, approachable pictures. So these all, have a smile, they're professional, they're fully clothed. Like I said, the one for Guy Kawasaki and the one for the woman who runs the preschool, those all fit their brand. And I think that covers all that I wanted to say about that. Let's go to the next part. So the headliner words, these are the words that appear right under your picture. And I think it's important to use all the real estate that we have available to us on LinkedIn. It's a platform just like anything else, and they make certain things available for you to use and for you to get noticed. And I think it's important to use the space that's available to you. The first part here, I just have VP of Sales and Marketing. That's a title, that's a role that may be enough, but I don't think it usually is. And if you want to get noticed with the LinkedIn algorithms and how sales and marketing and how recruiters use LinkedIn as a prospecting tool, you'll need more than a title. And these headliner words should match the attention you seek the most. So you need to portray yourself entirely, not just the current role that you're in or the current title that you have. So just progressing through these, I think it's important. You can see, let's just start with the VP of Sales and Marketing title. Role, probably not enough. KM strategies, I have no idea what that means. And it didn't match the company name and it didn't match a title. So that was one I was very puzzled with. Committed to the prevention of intimate partner violence and sexual assault, exclamation point. That was a good introduction to the women for the nonprofit that she was running, but it could have been a tagline in a different place on her LinkedIn profile, and she could have used those words better there. Then there was another one, activating clients to increase financial stability, strengthen emotional health, and create more meaningful relationships. This happened to be a life coach. KM strategies, knowledge management. I appreciate that over in the comments. It was also their initials, so it was even more confusing. The activating clients. This guy was a life coach, and it kind of described what he does, but I don't know what activating clients means. And so I was confused by what this actually meant. He could have said life coach, concentrating on financial stability, strengthening emotional health, and that would have been more powerful. The words that I chose were points that I was trying to make in terms of being a leadership coach, in terms of being a strategy consultant, the past in terms of being legal and operations executive. I've been published a book almost a year ago, so I've been an author for a year. I also have done a lot of speaking, and I wanted to call more attention to that. And then me personally, I'm an organizer of chaos, and that's kind of how I approach the world. I would much rather take everything out of the garage and organize it than do the dishes every day. So that kind of tells you about me. And then the last part, philanthropist. It was important to me to include the fundraising aspect and doing good in the world. So one question here is, what is the best way to write a headline when you're currently seeking an opportunity? So there are a couple ways for these headliner spaces, and I think you have, let's see, it looks like a couple lines, maybe 6 to 9 words, 6 to 12 words that you can actually fit into that space. I think it's important to put what you're looking for, and I've seen people see actual lists seeking new opportunities or open to new opportunities. If you don't want to say seeking, you can say open to new opportunities. I think it's important to include the title or the type of work that you want to be doing. So if you're looking for project manager work, or you're looking for engineering, then be very specific and put that up in the headliner space. Then there's another question. Would you be able to speak more to the search optimization and how it works? I want to balance writing a headliner that is true to me and will show up. Okay, this is a mystery about LinkedIn, and I think you have to experiment. So there are recruiters. You can see on part of the information on your LinkedIn how many times you're getting noticed, how many times you appear in searches, and you can tell with the words, if your numbers are going up, that those are working. That it at least is getting noticed more. And then if you're getting contacted more than that, then you know it's really working. If your numbers are not going up, then I would play with the words that you're using in your headliner space. The other part that I would recommend is look at other people's profiles who have the kind of job that you want, and see if any of those words resonate about you personally and that are true to you, and then maybe put those words either in there or in the introductory text, which we'll talk about next. So the other part of the search optimization for LinkedIn is that it's a mystery. So you're just going to have to play around and see what gets noticed. And there is a career section on there where you can seek advice as well. So that might be something to find people in your specific area to talk about what those words would be. But I think the thing that I've found the most helpful, either for myself or working with clients, is to be able to go pull 8 or 10 profiles of people who have the kind of position that you want and find the commonalities among those and use those words in that context. So there's another question here. What are some headline tips for someone transitioning careers? Okay, this is important. So when you're transitioning and you want to switch roles completely, you're going to need to be able to be creative with the words that are on here. You're going to have some words that indicate what you've got in terms of past experience, and you're going to have to use some words that are indicating what you're moving towards. So the words that I have on my headliner that kind of indicate the past experience are the legal and operations executive. And then the leadership coach and strategy consultant are the work that I'm doing right now with companies and individuals. So I included those as well. And then I also included words about what I want to be doing more of, which is the author and the speaker part. So for those people transitioning, you're going to need to choose probably about half and half words that match what you're transitioning to, whether it's industry or whether it's words about the role or characteristics or behavior is the other thing that I think is important. Let's see. There's one more question. The headliner goes back to the notion of being distinctive, which I spoke about in the beginning. What's a good strategy to know if your profile comes across as distinctive or bland? I find the best way is to put myself in the shoes of the person I'm trying to reach. So if I'm trying to reach a recruiter, then I'm going to put myself in the shoes of the recruiter and think, okay, does this person stand out? What makes them unique? Do I get a really good idea of what they're going to do as a performer, as an employee? Do I get that they're high integrity? Do I get that they're productive and efficient? Do I get, whatever's important to me as a recruiter? That's what I'm going to be looking for in the profile, and whether you portray that. I think that it's also important to run it by someone. So if you're doing an informational interview with someone who is in the new industry or whatever you're transitioning to, or whoever you're trying to reach, if you're staying in the same industry, I would ask for feedback and see, does this resonate with you? Does it seem boring to you? My husband's right in the middle of this right now. He lost his job in February and is now looking for something else. And he's an engineer and he abhors this whole process of selling himself. And he's like, why do I have to do this work? Why do I have to put that in my profile? He was one of those people that had no picture and very little description on LinkedIn. And I was like, dude, you gotta actually put your information in there. You have to sell yourself. So I would actually run it by several people. And what he's done is he's run it by 3 or 4, not just me. I'm in a completely different industry. He's in IT, but run it by other people in the industry on an informational, help me out basis or give me some feedback. And I think that's important and very helpful, is to get that feedback from other people. Am I being distinctive or bland? Am I memorable or not? Let me go on to give you a couple examples of good headliner graphics. So there's a whole nother section next to your name and your picture that you can use for graphics. And I think most people don't, and they end up with just the standard picture and or default picture of a blank space. If you are, I think I might have skipped a slide. Let's see where it went. most people don't use this space at all, and or if they do use it, they don't use it wisely. And so I would use this space to showcase your, either what you're doing as a business or what you're doing, something important about you. And for example, if you're a speaker and you're looking for speaking gigs, then maybe use a picture of you presenting here. Or maybe if there's something you want to convey, but there's no other place to fit it in your profile, maybe put it here. I particularly use the words author, speaker, advocate, and creative because I wasn't focusing on the lawyer part of my profile any longer, and I wasn't really able to fit the creative work that I do in other parts of my profile. So I actually called those words out, and I called those out using a screenshot from a video I was filming for a client. There are other examples here. The woman that was sitting on the bench that had the logo for her company, and her name of the company was Creatively Innovative, and then it had a name under that. I thought her layout of that was really good. The other guy here, I'm not sure I would use the same picture in both places, and I would have my contact information, whether it was a phone number or email or some way to get a hold of me, instead of street address, unless he was really trying to attract foot traffic to that street address. So I would use a different picture, not the same picture twice, and then I would use something that you're trying to get people to use, whether it's the phone number, pick up the phone and call, or click on a connection of some kind rather than street address. So there's one more question here. How to conduct a stealth job search without your current employer noticing? Okay, you need to lock down certain permissions so that you're not notifying people of every change you make in your profile. There are a couple other things of don't bunch up everything all at the same time. So if you're asking for testimonials or you're asking for endorsements, don't ask for them all at the same time. Space them out over a couple weeks or couple months or half a year. Not that we have that luxury of time right now. If you're in the middle of a job search, you're probably going to want to strategically ask for people to endorse you or give you testimonials. I find that that's one of the ways. When those get bunched up, that's a pretty open signal that you're starting to look. So I would stretch things out, and then I would lock down your permissions. The other part here is this header graphic is a branding opportunity for taglines, company mottos, purpose, quotes. For individuals, it might be a place to put something that's important to you that you can't fit in elsewhere in your profile. So these are a couple examples of lost opportunities. The guy on the left, he's hiring, he's an engineer, he's hiring. He could have used the header to highlight positions that he has open. This woman at the podium, she's an engineer and she's speaking at UCLA to other engineers. She could use a better professional headshot there and then put the speaking at the podium picture just across the header so that you could see her in action. I think that would be a better use of her space, because right now both of those are just default. Okay, my friend who's the CEO, he's using a photo from an article, and then he has a tree as his header photo, and it doesn't fit anything else in his profile. And I just couldn't understand why he had that there. And to me, that's a missed opportunity. If it's an important point he's making with that picture, he could explain it in the introductory text. So there's kind of a bunch of missed opportunities on these, and they could have been great. So let's go on to the next area. These header graphics are really excellent branding opportunities. So the woman, Jo Dennis, she's head of HR at Pinterest. She's got a Pinterest board behind her, and she's also showcasing the achievement from going public as a company with them all at the New York Stock Exchange. So that's just really phenomenal use of the company with the Pinterest board behind her, plus the accomplishment as a company and going through that as the head of HR. The other one, Michael Palfini, he's the CEO coach that I mentioned. He's with a group called Vistage. He showed a company name, logo, what they do, and then a picture of board meetings. And he really matches his experience, and he matches the words in his text as well as the picture. And I thought these were really great illustrations of how that real estate can be used on LinkedIn effectively. This is my favorite, and this is one of the hardest parts to do well. The introductory text. I call it the show more, show less, because those are the words that show up there. And this is limited space. It's about 4 paragraphs, so I'd say use it wisely. There are a lot of possibilities to include in the space. You could do bulleted lists, you could do keywords, you could do descriptions, you could do highlights. I find a lot that people have a bio on their website and then they copy and paste it right over here. That's a lost opportunity in my opinion, and that you really want to call out things and highlight things here. You can also link to articles or interviews in this area. The cautionary note is that the first 4 lines show up when someone looks at your profile, so then you get the little words show more. So I would say put your must-see information in those 4 lines at the top. And let's see, I think the other really important thing in here is just remember what's your goal. And why do you want to get noticed on LinkedIn? If you're trying to attract clients, it's probably going to have different words in here than if you're looking to attract recruiters and hiring managers. And I just want you to keep in mind, again, that phrase, people hire people they like. So that's what you want to concentrate on with the language in here. I'm going to give you, let's see. If there's a picture with other people in it, do you need permission from all the others? I think if you're doing it at a conference, there's going to be a release, a photo release that people have agreed to or signed as part of the conference attendance, and you want to just double check that. If someone's taking a picture of you, you could, with other people in the background, and you don't have permission from them, then you're going to need to gray them out or you know, block out the faces or something so that you can't actually identify them. But good question. Let's go on to an example. Okay, I want to call out this woman, Sonya. She is a software engineer. She's in the greater New York area, so she's got a professional picture and she's got a picture of New York in the background. So mediocre use of, you know, the picture. It's good that she has a picture, but and then it shows the geographic area she's in, and it's a beautiful photograph. The header picture matches that, so it's okay, but not great. Her show more, show less only shows to the line with her name on it, so it's wasted space. So I would totally take out the hi there, so the text that matters is shown immediately, and the rest is good. Her description was great. She's first person, she's friendly, she talks about her work information, she talks about a little bit of personal interest, and the most important thing on here is that she has her contact information. She has her email as well as a website. So contact information is really critical if you're looking for a job. You want to make it easy for people to find you and get in touch. So I just called this out because she's a pretty young engineer. She's just getting started, but she had a really great example of how you can fit a little bit into that space. And she doesn't use all of it. She probably is using maybe a third of that space that's available to her. But I thought it was a really good example of what you can do with a little bit of space. Let's go to 2 other examples that I think are stellar. So this woman, Professor Maya, she's a sociologist, and she speaks on apologies and how she's trying to get women to stop apologizing about everything. So I thought she had a pretty stellar example. She's into public speaking, she's an apology hater and a confidence builder. And those words, confidence and apology, appear all over her descriptions and everywhere on her LinkedIn profile, starting from her profile picture to her header, it's everywhere. And I thought she did a phenomenal job of highlighting the things that are important to her and to the clients that she is seeking. So she goes on to say that she's still obsessed with getting women off the damn apology train, and she includes her contact information and website. It's too far down, so I couldn't include everything. But she says, and this is how she's reaching out to people of who she wants to attract and who she's trying to repel. She says, if you want to strengthen your confidence muscle, remember, our intention who we're trying to attract, she does this really, really well. She's brilliant at it. So if you want a good example of how to do it, I love this one for her. So when it gets to experience, and this is where most people spend most of their time putting information, and it looks suspiciously like resumes here, is this goes back to the original point I was making of what story do you want to tell? What story do you want to tell here? Do you want to have highlights and talents and interesting? I would say that's the main purpose for this particular area, is to be able to highlight the things that you want to call attention to. So I would say you don't need to recreate your resume here. You can give more detail in your resume over your job experiences over time. You can go bare bones, or you can give the facts, or you can tell your experience story. So if you're applying through LinkedIn using your LinkedIn profile, make sure that you have the information in here that you want, and that you haven't done a bare bones version of your experience in here, and then you apply for a job. It makes it harder to match using Resumex and whatever other resume matching tools they're using. So I think that's important to remember. The other thing I think is important is if you're looking for a promotion or a higher level position than the one you currently have, then you want to highlight the skills that you have that matter to that higher level position. And if you're worried about ageism, you don't need to list every job you've ever had. You can be selective about the experience that you want to highlight. There may be other areas you want to highlight in your storytelling. So just keep that in mind as you go through this. I have one client example. So she's a high level manager, but she's not a director level position, and she wants to be COO. So there are very specific things that we highlighted in her profile about being a leader, about her executive experience, about certain expertise in the finance, technical, legal, new technology spaces. We wanted to highlight her project management experience, and then we wanted to highlight company size, coaching and mentoring that she'd done, and that she was helping women succeed. So I think depending on what you want to highlight for what purpose, then you can be more detailed about that particular experience. The other thing that's important is, do you want a summary or do you want to give every detail? Do you want to use bullets or do you want to use a paragraph? And then the most important thing in here is to include achievements and accomplishments. And if at all possible, try to tie them to numbers or percentages, whether it's a reduction or an increase in revenue. Whatever the results are, that's what you want to highlight in your experience. So I included one here that just had two experiences listed. So that woman that was sitting on the bench that had the logo, she was at Apple, and then she started her own design business, and she started it while she was doing that. So she's done it on the side for a while, but that's all she listed. But then her show more, show less, the introductory section, she really described what she does and how she helps people. So you can be creative with what you've got in your LinkedIn profile, and it's not a one size fits all. It's definitely not a one size fits all. Okay, let me take a minute to answer a couple questions before I go on. So how to write introductory text best when you're transitioning and kickstarting your career in the new field. This is where you would want to write analogies in your introductory text, or say what you're interested in, why you're transitioning to the new field, so that people really understand, okay, I'm moving from project management to teaching, or whatever the transition is. Say why you're interested, and say what skills that you had from your prior job applied in that new position. And then if you don't have a particular skill, but you have an approach that you can describe, I would do that, to say, this is my approach to, I'm just use project management, that one's easy. This is my approach to project management, and all trains run on time. Whatever you want to use as an analogy. I think it's important to be able to say why you want to transition, and then what skills apply to that new particular position that you're looking for. There's a question: would I be selling myself short if I have a non-wordy about me introduction? Yes, absolutely. My point of this whole presentation is use the real estate that's available to you on LinkedIn. And if you've only got 3 sentences in there, you are selling yourself short, definitely. Because you can You can highlight what's important to you. You can highlight values that are important to you. You can highlight what kind of work environment and culture you want to be in or what's important to you. And then let's see what else. I think it's important to use all the real estate. Now, does that mean you go to the word max and you've maxed out every single line? No, you don't have to do that. But I definitely would highlight things that are important to you. I think one of the reasons, let me just back up for a minute, and why clients end up coming to me is because they're unhappy in their jobs, they want to quit, or they've been laid off and now they're looking for something else, or their experience of what they're doing there is just exhausting them, and they know they need to change. So what ends up happening, we get down to the bottom of it, is that it's a cultural mismatch. And I don't just mean like international cultural mismatch, I mean of values. So if you value integrity and your company is misreporting numbers, that's a mismatch in values. And what's going to happen is you'll be okay for a while, but then it'll grate on you, and then it'll really annoy you, and then you'll be like, I can't stand this another minute. You may not identify that it's a mismatch in values, but you will be exhausted and want to quit. And that identifying that that's one of the reasons for that cultural mismatch and that annoyance and aggravation and unhappiness, that's really important to get down to the bottom of it before you can say, okay, now I get it. I really like to work with people who are smart. I really like to work in a high integrity environment. So then you can put your list of important things, and those are the things I would talk about and highlight in your profile. And definitely don't sell yourself short and use the real estate that you have. So another question, any additional tips on how to create your bio? I find that really challenging to make it punchy and short, especially when pivoting industries. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, this is the part I find the hardest out of all the things that I'm talking about today, is that how do I talk about my achievements and accomplishments that doesn't feel like I'm just a bragging asshole? And then how do I actually highlight those achievements and accomplishments that matter for the next position going forward? So I find that this part is the hardest, and that you really kind of just have to step back and say, how would I describe this to my mom? Or how would I describe my job to my grandmother and what I've accomplished? And that kind of takes the edge off of being buzzword bingo like, and really can put it into plain English. And I think just simplifying it can help make that whole process easier. But I find this part the hardest. Another question, I'm working in a field that's unrelated to the field I want to get into. How should I handle that? So I'll go back to what I said earlier in terms of analogies, or highlighting experience that translates to the next field, or highlighting things that are important to you and how you would approach that if you don't have the experience yet. And then how you're working on getting that experience is important. So I think I answered that one completely before. And if I didn't, send me a note. What if I'm no longer at a company and don't have access to numbers? Then you can put it in percentages. And what I mean by that is, you know, greater than 20% as opposed to, oh, it was 22.5%. So I would say you can describe them, yeah, using percentages, or using, you know, reduction in revenue, descriptive terms like that. Just reduction as opposed to it decreased by 15%. So you might have to describe it a little bit more. And if you don't have access to the numbers, then I would say use your best guess. But if you don't feel comfortable guessing, then I would use descriptions like reduced or increased, and then not put a percentage in. Okay, I've got a few more questions here before I go on to the other slides. We have about 15 more minutes. So what is the best way to address gaps in employment? I'm trying to get back into the workforce after long breaks. I would say be authentic about it, to say I took a break. You don't have to explain the reason why. If you get into a conversation and want to disclose why, then you could, whether it was having kids or taking care of someone, or I just needed a break, or whatever your reason, or I wanted to explore the Galapagos, or I wanted to explore, you know, a new area, you know, academically, whatever your reason, you don't have to disclose it, and you don't have to explain it. Just say, I'm getting back in the workforce, and these are my skills, and this is what I'm looking for. But you can choose to disclose, you know, more or less depending on how comfortable you feel and who you're talking to. You know, if they're genuinely interested in why and it matters to them. You know, I took a year off with one of my maternity leaves. One of the startups I was at closed its doors and I didn't have a job to go back to. And I ended up having a health problem for that year, plus a newborn, the third kid. So I had a year long where I, you know, and I don't explain that to anybody. And then if I do, I say I was on maternity leave, extended maternity leave. They don't need to know that I didn't have a job to go back to. So it just depends on what, and I see a lot of people right now taking time in caregiver roles and explaining that, and people have empathy for that if you're being authentic and you want to share that, but you don't have to share information that you're uncomfortable sharing. When would you choose summary versus every detail or bullet versus paragraph? So I go back to what story do you want to tell and what's your purpose in telling it. If you're just trying to get a lot of information across and you have a little bit of real estate, then I would opt towards the summary versus the every detail, and I would opt towards the bullet versus the paragraph. I tend to use paragraphs because I find it difficult to put what I do in bullet form. So as a lawyer and explaining the things that I had done as general counsel or in a corporate counsel role, I found it difficult to describe all of that in a bullet format. So I ended up writing paragraphs. But if what you're doing lends it better to bullet points, then I would use that. And you could try it both ways and see what is comfortable, see what gets your points across. And like I said earlier, get feedback from somebody who's in that role. Does this make sense to you? You know, am I missing something? Does it convey everything I need it to? And really try to get that feedback from other people who are in those kind of roles. Oops. Okay. 2 more questions here. What do you recommend in the case of a gap because of relocation and caregiving? Should it be addressed or just left as a gap on the resume or on LinkedIn? I think it's fine to leave gaps there. And if you feel compelled to it, you could say living abroad or internationally or something in a caregiving role. I think that is, you know, people are more comfortable describing their time doing that. So it just depends on what your level of comfort is doing that. And then, like I said earlier, answering another question is, it's up to you. Don't feel like you have to fill in those gaps. It's up to you and what you feel comfortable doing. So the last question I have here for now, I list all work experience with skills and results on my LinkedIn, but when I'm applying for positions via resume, I only put relevant experience related to the position I'm applying to. Is this a problem? No, I think that's the exact way to go about it, because then you get the whole point of the resume is to get the next conversation. And the whole point of having that next conversation is for them to want to know more about you and say, yes, this person I want to bring on board. I want them to help me get the same results they got for other people. I want them to help me get those results for me. And having the information in your resume is like the teaser to have the conversation. And then they can go find out more about you on LinkedIn to have that further in-depth conversation. So I think that's a great way to go about it. Okay, let's keep going on the slides so we can get through everything. Good experience examples. I picked out Tom Kalinski's CEO of SEGA of America. SEGA became the largest video game hardware and software manufacturer during the 90s. And so if you'll notice, he doesn't say, I led this. He just states a fact. And of course, during the 90s, he was there from 90 to 96. So it is a subtle way of explaining, I was in a kick-ass role as CEO and built it to be one of the largest companies in the world. The other ones I included here are the bullets. So improved efficiency, 80%. So uses numbers, uses accomplishments there. I thought that was really important. This particular software engineer had every single experience listed with 3 to 5 accomplishments, even at the intern level. So this was someone who didn't have a ton of experience, maybe 6 years. And I thought the way they had done it was really great. The thing that I couldn't tell is how important were those roles, and were they collaborative and part of a team, or did they lead them themselves? So that was one thing I would need to ask, you know, if I were interviewing that person. So then I want to go back to Professor Maya. So she knows her target audience really well. Women who apologize too much, women who show lack of confidence. She shows you at every turn on her LinkedIn page, from her picture to her header to her show more, show less section to her experience section, who she is and who she can help. And so this is kind of like the gold standard of being able to put together that profile and reach the people that she's trying to. So I wanted to give you, good, better, best here. The question of, if I use the option of looking for opportunities in LinkedIn, my current employer recruiters can perhaps see it. How do I avoid my current employer knowing? Okay, I wouldn't use looking for opportunities in the header if you're currently employed and you don't want your employer to know, because they're going to know. Let me tell you, your managers will know. Your HR people will know. So don't put looking for opportunities in your header. I know there's a choice when you say, how do you want to be contacted, or reasons for being contacted. I think there's something that says open to opportunities or something. I would do something more subtle like that, as opposed to looking for opportunities, because that to me is a red flag. Well, as a manager, I would be talking to you, why are you looking for new opportunities? But that's because I'm a proactive manager and I don't sit back and wait for things to happen like that. I really want to talk to my employees and have a career development plan in place for them. And if they don't want to be there, then how can I help them not be there? Or how can I help them find something that makes, fits them better? But not every manager is like that. Let's see. Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, so there's an option on LinkedIn to actually put the open opportunities or open hearing opportunities. I think that's fine. Everybody's open. Like, I always take recruiters' calls, even if I'm not looking, because other people I know may be looking, and I might be able to recommend the right kind of person for them. Let's see, we have about 8 minutes left. I'm going to make sure I get to all these parts for you. Let's go on, and I'll try to answer questions in just a minute. So in the endorsements, testimonials, recommendation area, I think it's important to use a variety of messages and to highlight certain skills, and then to have a variety from clients, bosses, colleagues, higher ups. And then what I mentioned before about timing is try not to bunch them all up if you're looking for, a job, because that'll be one indicator that they're looking, because now they're asking everybody and their brother for an endorsement or a testimonial. So ask key people for these endorsements. If you're seeking a higher position, seek endorsements and testimonials from those with higher titles, so that you're shown in a position of trust by people who are already in those roles. And if you're trying to change positions or industries, this is a great place to show versatility or cross-functional skills, that people like to work with you and would like to work with you in the future. And if you're starting a job search, ask current colleagues for a recommendation, or clients, or people that you work with in cross-functional teams. Timing is everything. So I would say consider spreading out your ask. And then this is my favorite. When someone gives you a compliment for a project or achievement, consider asking them to put that on LinkedIn as a recommendation. And also send an email to your boss saying they loved working with you on it. I think that's important. And then these connections, are an excellent opportunity to cultivate your networking, not just your skills, but also just to build your network and build stronger connections, especially now. So these are a couple examples that I use. These are 2 clients and other contacts, and one was a law student in a particular context. The other one was a business owner. So I wanted to be wide in the kind of people that I showed on there. Then the other guy that's on here, he's very thorough and knowledgeable and always completes his tasks on time. And if you're a web developer and it's important to code and get your code on time, which obviously it is in that role, then that's something you want to highlight. So just be specific about that. Then the next part here is volunteer work. Just be broad if you've done a lot of volunteer work about what you're including. And some of these experiences may be leadership based. So don't be shy about including those kind of leadership activities, whether you're a scout leader or a sports coach. Be broad in your thinking. This could be church leadership. It could be a board of directors, either volunteered or paid. So I think any of those, like public office, I don't include my school board work because it's not important to me right now, but if I were seeking another position, then I might include that. I've included fundraising and event planning for things. I've included the performance that I mentioned, the San Carlos Chickens Ball, why I had that crazy hat picture. I've been in a leadership role in there since 2004, and I wanted to highlight that, so I actually included that in there. I think this particular person at the food bank volunteer and qualitative researcher is that he volunteered in the food bank, and then he also volunteered in the sense that he's highlighting the work that he's doing for the organization. So his role and the work that he wants to do. I think that's important to show that you're not just involved as the volunteer in the food bank itself, but that your volunteer role matches your professional role. So I see that when CPAs or lawyers or other people volunteer in organizations and then do that role, whether it's, you know, accounting or contract negotiation for the organization. So if it matches the role that you're in, I would highlight it definitely. So if you have special skills or anything, this is not the time to be modest. I would say be factual and truthful. And if you've got special skills of speaking other languages or technical skills or fundraising, certifications, especially like in the privacy area is important. Any kind of courses you've taken or trainings, this is the place to list those things. One of the questions here is, I have a lot of trainings in my professional field. Should I write all the information on LinkedIn? I would say, what story are you trying to tell and what purpose is the information in there? So go back to the very fundamentals that I talked about at the front end of what story are you trying to tell, and is including it helping that, or is including it harming that message you're trying to get across? If it's trainings that match for a professional role that you're trying to go into, then I would say include it. Otherwise, you might question it a little closer about what that looks like. I added my patents in here because I thought it was important for the tech companies that I've been working with. And then I added a couple other things, the publications, the book that I published, and then organizations that I was working with. I would say if you speak other languages, definitely add those in, and definitely add the proficiency level as well, because that's important and becoming more important as we speak. I wanted to highlight a couple areas in the features area. I wanted to highlight the book that I had written, and I wanted to highlight an interview that called me a disruptor, because those were two things that were important to me to be able to reach the right kind of client. And if you want to elevate, you know, something in your profile, this is the place to do it, whether it's a TEDx talk or a book or an article or an interview, whatever it is. Use every inch of real estate on your LinkedIn profile and make it easier for people to find you. I've got a book that I'm willing to share with you guys, and I have a QR code there, and I've included the link to get it for free. So sonyasigler.com/book, and then you can use the QR code to get directly to that webpage, and that will enable you to download it for free. But that is where I use the features section to highlight the book and other things that are important to me. So last couple points before I sign off is that it's important to remember that LinkedIn is a platform, and decide how you want to use it. And like I said, use all that real estate. And then other thoughts. I didn't talk a lot about education or permissions. I mentioned permissions a little bit in answering some questions. But education, you know, go back to why you're telling the story, and does that education matter to what you're doing? I think it's important to highlight a couple things. If you're new and starting out, highlight your degree and other activities that you did during school, and especially if you worked while you were going to school. Permissions, I talked about those a little bit in terms of, you know, disclosing that you're looking for a job by, you know, having it alert everybody and their brother every time you make a change. Just be circumspect about that. So let's just recap. To get all this information to stick to people and get you to stand out and get you noticed is to really be authentic, compelling, and storytelling, you know, with the storytelling mindset. So all of this work should just result in a wait, you know, tell me more, I want to know more. So the more that you can do that, the better. And then keep the audience in mind and the context. Last, and like I said, we'll share these slides, so you don't need to worry about that. But these are good resources and articles as well, if you want to go deeper and read about how to get your point across. The last thing I'll say is, here's my contact information. Take a picture. If you'd like to go deeper to do this work on getting noticed on LinkedIn and want my help to assess what you have and then retool what you've got, please set up a call and we can begin the process. Usually I have an 8-week program for $3,500, but most people who want to get noticed on LinkedIn right now don't have the 8 weeks to work through everything. They want to get right to the changes on LinkedIn. So I put a special program together just for you guys for this group. It's a 3-session package for $595, and this includes an assessment of what you have now on LinkedIn, and then we would work through your profile together through those 3 sessions and make it, so that you stand out and get noticed and that you are standing out from the crowd. So if you want to do that, go ahead and use that QR code there to schedule a call with me and we can get started. And if you have sent me a note to LinkedIn, that would be excellent. I really am looking forward to helping you because this is really, really important work. And if you have more questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A window. We've kind of come to the end of our time. It's 11:01. If you want to stay longer, I will answer more questions on here. And
I just, sorry, Sonia, I want to jump in before people leave. I just wanted to thank you so much for this really valuable and inspiring webinar, especially at this time. I think we all needed it. I've learned so much. I thought I knew everything about LinkedIn, but you never do. And I know I have still a lot of work to do on LinkedIn. So really appreciate that. Sonia has very kindly agreed to stay on and answer any questions that are in the Q&A box. So you're most welcome to stay a little while more. We've recorded this presentation, so we'll be sending this to everyone who signed up, and also all the links that Sonia mentioned, her upcoming coaching program, her book, and everything else in case you didn't have time. So Sonia, I again appreciate you doing this and staying back to answer the rest of the questions, and I encourage everyone to connect with each other on LinkedIn. We've shared all our LinkedIn profiles in the chat box, so definitely connect with each other. My name, for those who just joined, is Naina Kaputi, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Expat Woman. Okay, Sonia, I'm handing the platform back to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. I really appreciate you having me on here. This is such important work and it's hard. Okay, so let me answer the rest of the questions. Do you need to post or share something consistently to show that you are active on LinkedIn? Do hiring managers judge a job seeker on the same? Okay, this goes back to why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you trying to get noticed? And then what story are you telling? So if I'm trying to get noticed as a speaker and an author, then I'm going to be posting and sharing information consistently because I want to be seen as a thought leader on that topic or topics or subject matter. If you're trying to be a subject matter expert in your industry, then I would definitely be posting and commenting on things. If you're an engineer and you're writing code and it doesn't matter to be seen out there that way, then I wouldn't be doing it. If you're looking for a job and how you code matters and you really, for example, use the Agile method and you have a specific approach to that, then you might be commenting on that, or same thing with Six Sigma or some other method. I think that would be important to be able to share something and be noticed for that. But then I go back to what I said in terms of what the purpose is and what you're trying to get noticed for. If it fits in with that, then do it. If it doesn't fit in with it, then please don't waste your time doing it. I think I answered this one, but I just want to reiterate it. I have a lot of trainings in my professional field. Should I write all the information on LinkedIn? Going back to what story are you telling and the reason why, if it fits in with that and it matters for you professionally and what you're trying to be noticed for, then definitely include that information in there. Let's see, what's the ideal endorsement length? I think 2 or 3 sentences is really great if it conveys the information that you want. So for example, the one example that I included about being on time and professional and wanting to work with you again, I think that's great information. If it doesn't really describe in enough detail how someone worked with you and why it was important, then you might ask for a little more detail. What's interesting is when I've asked people to write something Everyone, it's one of two things. People are like, oh my gosh, yes, I would love to, and they do it right away. Or the answer is, oh my God, yes, I'd love to, and then they never do it because they don't find time or whatever reason. So you might have to ask a half a dozen people to get 3. So it might be a 50% ratio. So don't be afraid to ask. Spread them out in the ask so that they're not all showing up at once. Because what's happening now is there's a permission or an approval feature so that when someone does endorse you or give you a testimonial, you get to look at it before it gets posted. So it's not just everything is going up without your approval. So you can pick and choose which ones you want, but it will show up with the date that they submitted it to you. It won't show up the date that you approve it. So that's one other feature on LinkedIn. Let's see. Okay. How to write accomplishments if my previous position was not the kind where you have access to numbers, percentages of increase of any kind, but rather do the job accurately and deliver due deadlines. Okay, so this is the problem I had when I first started trying to rearrange my LinkedIn profile to not look so lawyerly and to be more operations centric, and then to be more mentoring, coaching centric, is exactly this. Because when I wrote about the lawyer stuff that I did, I'm like, I negotiated all the agreements with online banks when Quicken started accepting bank data into it. And it's like, I really had to, some of this is a game you have to play. So I really had to go back and look at, okay, how many agreements did I negotiate over what time period? So it was just factual, and it was just reflecting those facts. So it was over 50 agreements with 50 different banks, and it was over a 9-month period. So is that out of the ordinary? I don't know, because I haven't negotiated agreements for other entities. I know what I did there. So that one is more factual based. And if you just count up what you did, I mean, this, like, I have a client who's a controller. They close the books every month on time, you know, or an on-time percentage of 98.99%, whatever the numbers are. So if on time matters, then I would highlight that description, even if it's month in, month out, and then it's on time. I would also highlight the actual skills. And then if there are other things that are important, let's see, when I, on operations, when I would do time entries and gather all that data to go into client bills, I had a self-service system. So one of the things I had done was automate everything. So I talked about the automation. I didn't just talk about the on-timeness. I talked about the automation. So there are going to be certain aspects of what your accomplishments are and achievements that you can describe. And then I would say, keep in mind what story you're trying to get across, and to use that. And those would be what I would highlight in the accomplishments. But I do find that particular part the hardest. Let's see, yeah, I can go back to the slide with the book in it. Whoops, there we go. The free book. So in my name on how I show up here on Zoom, it's got the sonyasigler.com/book link, and you can find it on my website as well. So if anybody missed that, you're welcome to get through the website as well. The next one is, can you please share tips on how to write to recruiters so that they respond and call you back? Okay, this goes back to the note I started at the very beginning of what story are you telling for what purpose? And then the authentic personal branding slide of being able to be compelling and authentic and attract the people to you. So if you're a recruiter, put yourself in the recruiter's shoes and read your email from that perspective. Do you want to write back to that email? Do you want to respond to that voicemail? So if the answer is no, then you need to rewrite what you've done. And if the answer is no to that voicemail, then come up with a different script for leaving a voicemail to a recruiter. I think people hire people they like. So if you have portrayed yourself in a likable fashion and you've connected on a personal level, especially now with everything that's going on, you know, everybody's working remotely, you have to connect on a personal level with people. I know recruiters are busy. I know they're trying to juggle a lot of different things. And You know, I don't have a problem saying something like, I know you're busy and I know you have 15 phone calls to answer in the next hour. The reason you need to answer mine is because I can help you solve this problem. And if you get me in there, then that will be one less job you have to fill. So some answer like that, that is true and is heartfelt, is important. And to me, that doesn't sound like bragging. That sounds like I'm trying to solve a problem for that person. And if you highlight a skill that you're bringing to the table, that's good as well. But you really have to put yourself in the shoes of that recruiter and say, would I answer that question or not? Would I respond to that or not? Let's see. I think there's a couple more questions here. Let me just read for a second. Okay. Yes, so the next slide people wanted to see was the 3 resources. Let me go back to that one. So the 3 resources were articles and a book, and actually 2 books and an article, the Harvard Business Review article of reinventing your personal brand. So everyone who talked about changing industries, reinventing yourself, and changing industries or changing roles, that is a really fabulous resource. In my own book that I've shared with you guys, it's there's a couple places. Chapters 6 and 7 really talk about your superpowers, your own superpowers, and what your strengths are, and being able to own that. And then chapters 8 and 9 really talk about being known internally inside your own company, because you do have to sell yourself inside your own company as well as externally. So when you start to look for a new job, you're definitely doing a selling job and getting noticed that way. So let me just go to the last slide and say, this is my contact information. And if you do want to go deeper, go ahead and schedule a meeting with me and we can figure it out. So thank you. I think that's the end of the questions. Totally appreciate it.
Thanks again, Sonya, and thank you everyone who stayed back to listen to hear Sonya's responses. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of the day, and definitely get in touch with Sonya and you know, access all the resources she so generously provided.